Hey guys, this is Blake, and this is another episode of Kickass of Awesome. I'm here to talk about High Kick Girl. Now, High Kick Girl was probably made to cash in on the success of Black Belt. Now, I really liked Black Belt. It was a very polished-looking film, but delivered some of the greatest fight scenes I've ever seen. But it's one of the few movies where it's karate that looks really good. Now, I've practiced karate in the past. I'm not saying that's a worse martial art, but it just doesn't look as good on the screen. It looks always kind of awkward. Like I watched Sanshiro Sugata Part 2, which was made a long, long time ago. And I always thought that it was just uncomfortable watching how bad the karate was portrayed in terms of the choreography. But Black Belt was able to do that perfectly, and I was looking forward to High Kick Girl because there was a lot of comparisons there. Now, High Kick Girl isn't as good as Black Belt. It's actually kind of shoddy in comparison. It feels very amateurish because it was, but yeah, I also liked it. I was okay with a lot of its failures and was happy with the strengths, even if the strengths were very debatable. If I can compare it to anything, it's Ong Bak 2, but like a million times more low budgeted. I mean, Ong Bak 2 actually looks like a pretty lavish production. High Kick Girl does not. With Ong Bak 2, I made a point in my review of that it was just all martial arts. Great choreography, but as a movie, it kind of sucked. The directing was fine. It was sometimes even inspired, and it looked really polished, but there was no story. The characters were flat. Tony Jaa was just sullen the entire time, which, considering he went insane on the set of that, was probably his usual facial expression. It was just, other than the martial arts, he had nothing. And this is kind of like that, except the martial arts aren't as good, and the movie is even shoddier. But the difference for me, where I think I like it just as much as I did Ong Bak 2, was that High Kick Girl at least tries to put a little bit more emphasis on the characters. The story is pretty dumb, but there are more scenes where the characters are developing and stuff like that. I'm sure that when they were writing it, they just wanted to write it for the fight scenes, but they put a little bit of effort in there, so I actually cared what was going on. But when it comes to the choreography, I thought it was pretty good. All the people who are fighting are obviously martial artists, and there's plenty of different styles. It's that mix between stylish and realistic. So when somebody kicks somebody in the face, it looks like they actually hit him. At one point, you even see the main girl kick a guy. It looked like right on his nose. And I was like, oh, God. And then there's another time where you see, I think it's actually the same guy. She runs and knees him in the face, and his head bounces off the wall. It looked pretty grisly, and I was wondering how many people were sent to the hospital for it. It's not quite as brutal as, like, Chocolate was, but it was still pretty brutal. And there's a lot of fight scenes, too. It's just almost one fight scene after another. The film deals with the importance of kata within martial arts. That's always been sort of a controversial issue. A lot of people think kata is kind of pointless and just makes you memorize moves that you usually won't use in a fight, but they do a pretty decent job at exploring that angle. And like I said, I cared for the characters, and that was really why I put it the same rating as Ong Bak 2, because technically it's far worse than Ong Bak 2. But whereas in Ong Bak 2, I didn't really care about what was going on, at least this movie I cared. The main girl, Rina Takeda, I think her name is, she could turn out to be a pretty good action star. She is, I guess, a pretty diehard black belt in real life, and her acting, it's much like the rest of the movie, kind of amateurish, but the part fit her well. I mean, I bought her as kind of like this tough bully chick, but they did a good job with her, and I think that she could really grow into something good. And same with the director. I think he's really where the movie screws up, because, for example, he has this tendency to repeat scenes in slow motion. This is actually kind of cool, and I have to admit, I didn't mind it as much as a lot of people did. A lot of people really complained about that in this movie. But sometimes he'll just do extra slow motion, but you'll think that it's repeating a scene, but then it doesn't. And it gets confusing. And sometimes this leads to some real heavy continuity errors. Like, at one point you see her about to punch somebody. She pulls her fist back like that. But then it cuts to her doing like this, what do they call it? Hammer strike. whatever that is, though, some overhand blow. But it just made scenes kind of awkward and confusing. And even worse, the sound effects really blowed. In fact, I don't think there were any sound effects. Now, in real life, if you punch somebody, unless you're maybe the one doing the punching, you're not going to hear a whole lot of noise there. But in movies, they always add like some sort of sound effect when somebody punches. And even though it's not always realistic, I think that it's definitely realistic, or not realistic in a good way. It makes things sound more edgier. So when they don't have any sound effects like that, so when she punches somebody, it almost makes the blow feel soft, even though she's obviously hitting them. And this was even, I think, more distracting when at one point one of the characters was fighting this chick with some sort of chain weapon, like not like the one in Kill Bill, but the same sort of concept that probably was inspired by it. But she's swinging around and throwing at this guy, and you don't hear anything. You don't hear any swooshing kind of noise, which I think really could have added to the intensity there. Instead, it just kind of feels like it's making no noise, missing him, and it makes the scene just come across as really flat. It's as if the director never really realized the importance of sound effects in his movies. There's some music, and actually I think the main score... There's two main themes you'll hear. There's the one that's actually sung by the main actress. Not my kind of thing, but she does fine, I guess. And there's like this kind of spaghetti western-ish kind of score. And I liked that, and I think they should have played that more. But for the most part, there's no real music. And at times it seems like the director also speeds up the film. And like, not so it makes it look faster, but it actually kind of just makes things kind of seem... like there's some sort of effect. Like there's this waterfall fight scene where it looks like the characters sort of have like a shadow. I don't even know how to explain it, but it looks really weird. And I thought it took away from that fight scene. So everything about this movie was amateurish, but I liked the fight choreography, and I cared about the characters enough to where I actually liked the movie. So I'd only recommend this to diehard martial arts fans like myself, but consider what I said about how the directing often works against the choreography. So you might not like it, but I suggest you watch it for sure. If you want to read my full written review, just check the link in my description, and here is the trailer. I hope you enjoy it.
なんだ構えもなけ。
私は証明しなくちゃいけないの。自分が強いってことを。
1000日をもって鍛とし、万日をもって練とす。
壊し屋って知ってる？依頼を受けた相手を壊す集団だって。